Okay, welcome to the first of our live streams. It's excellent to see so many viewers on already. We've been putting out a couple of emails and social media to get as many people onto this. So this new series, welcome to live streaming. We're going to interview emergency response teams and folk all around the world from different sort of walks of life, different types of emergency response, to hear how they do things, whether it's in a public safety setting, whether it's in a corporate environment and it's a crisis they're dealing with, or whether it's an industrial or manufacturing site. So this emergency response exists in all sorts of different things. These streams are going out live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can watch live from any of those platforms. And we'll also put this out as a recording afterwards, and it'll be the audio put out on our podcast series, which you can get on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or Spotify. If you are watching live, please say hello in the comments, no matter which of the platforms you're on. We are able to see comments coming in from no matter if it's Facebook or YouTube, etc. So do say hello, and we are seeking comments and questions. So if you've got a question on today's show, do send it in. This week, I'm joined and delighted to have on board Mark from Ronin Rescue, who's going to do the first episode. It's all new to us, and Mark is well experienced in this. So he runs a very successful podcast called the Ronin Rescue Cast, which I'll put up the URL here if you want to get Mark's SoundCloud. So Mark runs this, and we're going to talk today all about the world of rescue standby, confined space, rope access, and where the industry is going. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be delighted to introduce you to the Rhode Island Bomb Squad, who are going to come on as well and talk about their equipment, their training, and what happens in a bomb squad versus what you hear today. So that should be good. So I'm going to bring Mark in here to the chat. Mark, hello, welcome.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, clear, good.
Excellent.
Thanks for joining. Mark, you're in BC, British Columbia at the moment?
Yeah, British Columbia, Canada right now.
Excellent. So Mark is the CEO and president of Ronin Safety and Rescue, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Mark's also very involved in search and rescue in British Columbia. Before that was armed forces, a structural firefighter, captain of the heavy rescue in City of Delta, down near Vancouver. So what a great first guest to have.
I'm honored. I appreciate this. We're breaking new technology ground again.
Yeah. So I met Mark many, many years ago, I think in Vancouver at the time. And we've had a great fun staying in touch throughout. He's very good to invite me on his podcast before. And so it's nice to be able to do this back. So Mark, tell me a little bit about, or everyone a little bit about Ronin Rescue. What do you do? What is standby rescue? I mean, as a first place, I mean, I'd say that to anybody and they've no clue what that means.
So you kind of did two questions there. So I'll hit the first one kind of first.
Sure.
What's Ronin Rescue? What do we do? Generally, we try to remove risk from clients. And we do that through training. We do that through rescue standby. We do that through rope access services. A lot of the stuff that a client finds too onerous to do on their own, or needs training to do on their own, or too risky to do on their own. So that's where we've kind of found a niche in the market for that, whether that be training even emergency response teams. We train police, fire, military, and different rope techniques, different rescue techniques through the whole gamut of confined space, trench, rope, obviously, so that either they can take on that task themselves or they don't have to, which leads into the whole rescue standby question. And that's around most developed countries have OH&S regulations that require first aid and evacuation regulations for workers. Some of them use the term rescue, some of them use first aid and evacuation, where if someone's entering, for instance, a confined space, they have to have somebody there able to rescue that person. So a lot of the times we'll either be brought in to provide the training for that. So we train their teams to do it. That'd be industrial teams, could be fire teams. But rescue standby specifically for us means we're going out to a site and providing that service for that client on the site, because they either do not have that capacity or the space or the site is too dangerous that they don't want to expose their workers to it.
Gotcha. So what's a common day for a rescue standby team? What happens?
Um,
Nothing? Or
yeah,
are
I
there
mean,
other jobs going
that's the
on? Is that a
goal.
good day?
Um, I won't say who I was working for in the past because this isn't, they're a great company, what have you. Um, First one I walked onto before I started my own company back, I started in 2003. So we're talking a while ago now. We walk on and we're on site for maybe 5 minutes and the alarm goes off. And an individual has removed the scaffold guard barriers on his scaffolding inside of a sewage digester and has walked off the edge of the scaffold, fallen 35 feet into the bottom of the sewage digester. And I was jacked. I mean, I was a young firefighter at the time. I'd been on 4 or 5 years. Boom, this is great, right? Like, this is what I signed up for. We wrap into this space, package this guy, ropes come down, up he goes. We had the patient out of the hole before fire or ambulance even showed up. And as we stop to high five each other, I kind of look at me via the view of my partner because my partner's covered head to toe in human feces. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm probably covered head to toe in human feces at this point as well. And because we're both doing the same job down here. And at that point in time, I kind of thought going on scene with trained staff to prevent rescues from happening might be a better viewpoint than just the straight response element of this. And so that's kind of why we formed Ronin at the time and the direction we sort of went. To give you an example, our rescue team member, they have to have, not only their rope and confined space to NFPA, they have to have industry courses like fall protection and confined space and WMIS and lockout, and they have to be able to deliver tailboards and run gas monitors and do all of those things that also come in with safety. And then when you step up to a team lead, not only do you have to go through some leadership training, you also have to do construction safety officer training, like trade safety coordinator and construction safety officer. And to be a rescue specialist in our company, not only do you need the rescue, end of it, which is some advanced rescue training and, the physics and the math and all that, so you can deliver it, but you also need at least a 40-hour on top of a construction safety officer, some sort of OHS, HSE program, because we want people to go on sites to be able to talk intelligently to clients and say, hey, you can take the guardrails off the scaffolding. Here's, emphatically why I don't think that's a good idea based on my experience as a rescuer, based on my knowledge as an OH&S person or an HSE person, depending on where you're listening. So that we can try to prevent those accidents from occurring beforehand. And we've had many successes with that over the years, things like flow meters inside of live sewer pits, fall protection instances where we've, had people tie back in or change their tie-ins. And I just think instead of showing up to a site, kicking back, feet up, waiting for something to go wrong, it's more value to the client, obviously, that we're doing something, but it's also safer for the people that we're supposed to be helping. At the end of the day, we want people to go home safe to their families. Going home with 2 broken legs because you walked off of a, scaffolding. Yeah, you're going home, but that's not the same as just walking home at the end of the day and going, hey, you know what? I had a bit of a head shake experience today, and I think I'm going to learn from it.
And so they're actively involved in the safety on the site, not just waiting for a rescue to happen.
Yeah, and that's for people out there that want to start rescue standby, or for people out there that are employing rescue standby teams, look at that. You can certainly hire professional responders on their days off, and they're good people. There is no, I shouldn't say there's no bad people. Our competition here, they're good people. They're excellent responders. Not an iota, I'd say it any other way. The difference comes when you start getting into that minutia is, how good are they? And what about that prevention piece? Because that's huge. When you think about, when we talk about, mitigating risk for a client, having work show up in our organization or our area and do an investigation and get shut down for a day. That site we were on, wastewater treatment plant owned by a government entity, obviously investigations. They've got emergency services on their site. And there's that old kind of saying where if you open the door, expect people to walk through it. Well, now the fire department's there and they're doing one of these. Oh, hey, I wonder if that's up to code. The ambulance service is showing up, WorkSafe's showing up. And of course, WorkSafe's only looking at the incident, right? No, they're looking at everything when they walk through your door. So to help mitigate that risk to that client, you want to make sure from nuts to bolts. Like if none of those people showed up because you stopped an incident from occurring, everybody's going home safe. The risk to that client also gets mitigated a bit more because no one's arriving to start looking at their stuff.
Sure. And so I think we have a dog in the background on my end.
If you Mine can hear don't him. Sound that large, so
it's a large dog. So from that point of view, what are the threats that would typically be seen there? So I mean, fall from height is an obvious one. Okay, what is confined space to people? I mean, what is confined space? What is the threat? What does the rescue look like?
Let me start with the first part of the question because they are kind of two separate. What's the risk? There's a multitude. I mean, we've been doing this for 17 years. I didn't have gray hair when I started. And it's one of those things where we had somebody break into a site while we were on it, climb up a tower crane and commit suicide. And people go, what's that have to do with rescue standby? Well, most of our staff are professional first responders working on the side on their days off. We have full-time staff as well. But when the OFA attendant, the occupational first aid, sorry, I'm speaking an acronym, shows up and vomits, because this is kind of one of the first medical calls they've ever seen in their life, our people can move in, remove them from that situation, chat with them. They have CIS debriefing training and deal with the emergency services that are coming to site. Nothing to do with the reason we were on that particular site. We were there for a confined space rescue standby.
Yeah.
We were, I think, 5 stories underground on that site. But it's one of those things where just weird stuff happens where you have professional emergency responders on site, whether the generator breaks and all of a sudden all your power goes out, or someone breaks in to kill themselves, or you have an actual response. So confined space, general definition around most of the developed world, enclosed and partially enclosed space, large enough that you can get in to do work. Some of them have atmospheric levels in there, whether, could develop a bad atmosphere. Generally, though, it's configured in such a way that it inhibits emergency response. You've got to go in on technical equipment. You've got to rappel in. You've got long ladders with vertical areas where you'd have to raise someone out, either using an SRL or whether you're deciding to, sorry, someone's emailing me going, your iPhone's beeping on the live chat, sorry. Whether that's rope systems, whether that's SRL, but generally there's some technical rescue, and I kind of, air quote that's required to get the person out. Where if you could just walk in and it's a regular door that, somebody could walk in, you open it up, you roll the person into a basket stretcher, you pick them up, you walk them out. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about spaces on sites where it's technically difficult to get to. And these could be things where you're at a port, where it's a silo inside of a ship. I mean, we've done rescues inside of ships that have taken like an hour, where people are buried way down in the bottom of holds. These can be sewage places.
I was going to say, what is it, buried in the cargo, buried in or just injured on a lower deck? What do you?
Yeah, well, this is what's so funny. I mean, not funny. I mean, it's so unique about confined space and rescue standby is we might show up because they're welding in a bracket. Bracket broke. They're in the bottom of one of the cargo holds. And all of a sudden, there's a migrant in some forward hold in between the inner and outer walls of the ship. These things happen when you're on site because, of course, you might be their first point of land. And there might be CBSA for us. I keep speaking in acronyms. Customs and Border Service agents on the ship as well, doing their thing while you're doing yours, because time is money. Like, they want these things in and out, right? Like, we got 15 containers to take off. Oh, great, you idiot, you broke a weld on something. Get this fixed so we can get out to sea. And so there's multiple things going on the ship at once. And this is where all of a sudden, worlds collide and the laws of unintended consequences show up where, hey, you're already there. So, yeah, we generally show up because we're hired by a client to perform rescue or safety or risk mitigate for a specific task. Hey, we're going in to fix this. We're going in to weld this. We're going in to replace this. It's those weird laws. And I mean, that's easy to usually mitigate. We can help with, be part of the tailboards and chats. We can talk with the safety people. We can suggest ways of doing things. And we're not sitting there trying to tell you how you do your job. I hate those people with the clipboard that go, hey, you're doing it wrong. It says here right in aisle 5 that you're, no, we're not that way, right? We understand that safe work, there's 2 key words to that, one of which is work.
Yeah.
So we're there to assist in the safe, efficient being quick and safe sort of mitigation of that work as well. And that's primarily, but I would say probably once every 6 months, you get this weird thing occurring. We've been on sites where we've been teaching clients rescue to have their rescue alarms go off to perform rescue while we're there.
Yeah.
So these just law of unintended consequences. You spend enough time on sites and you just start seeing weird things. Cars driving into the side of buildings while you're doing something completely unrelated on the inside.
What kind of difference do you see from your background in public safety, where let's call it, it's not your incident, as when you move over to the private world and it is their incident? So, what differences do you see in the nature of the response with that?
It's an interesting question. And I'm going to go down 2 different streams. And I'm going to start with the positive fuzzy stream, where you're right. It is the incident of the client on which you're employed. So you definitely have some ownership around that. You also do not have the unlimited resources you have with the fire service, for instance. And, we got a helicopter, got radio via air traffic control, got a hold of a helicopter. I've been taking photos of an incident we were at once. We just absconded somebody's helicopter, basically. Hey, Gus, congratulations. You're now taking photos of this incident because it's very large. To do that in the private sector, someone's going to want money for that. And unlike the public sector, it's not that we have an unlimited amount of money, but in the public sector, they want the incident mitigated. And it's usually to the betterment of the community. So there is kind of more of an unlimited pot. And this is where now you kind of go, I said the positive, a little bit more on the negative side with it is, at some point on the private side, you end up with this uncomfortable conversation of profit and money versus risk mitigation in life. And when I started this, I said it, and I'll still say it to this day. There's a lot of work we do as a private rescue organization that I truly feel belongs in the public realm. And I fully understand that that's taking bread off of my table as a private rescue provider. But I never want to be put into the situation. Well, let's go back to the one where the person broke in, jumped, killed themselves. Our people were leaving site. They did not have to stay. I obviously have to pay them overtime to be there.
Yep.
Is the client going to authorize that? My client's already gone home for the day. I've got the skeleton night crew staff on at this point. Now I have to do what's best for the people involved. That may not be what's best for the bottom line. The client may turn around the next day and go, you guys should have stepped over the body and kept going. I pay people for that. That's all real world situation now that you don't have to deal with on the private sector, but you have to deal with on the public sector. And that's where, my apologies, I'm trying to hide this phone right now. But that's part of this thing on the public sector that becomes very difficult because, you have morals, you have conscience, you have people that you care for that are working for you. You make relationships with clients. And the mindset is, I came from the military. I got into the military for 5 minutes when I was 18. I got into the fire service at about 22. And my whole life's been public service. I've never had, until I started a business 17 years ago, that money as an issue per se. The Army, you need to blow something up, you blow it up. In the fire service, I need your boat. Congratulations, I own a boat, right? Like the private sector doesn't work that way, though. Somebody wants money for these things. And so budgeting became a huge issue. And there almost needs to be a course for budgeting for emergency response in the private sector because it's a different ballgame. And like I said, I never want to get to the situation where I have to balance morality or life over profit. And There's people out there that do that, and it's disgusting. And you really, if you're hiring a private rescue provider, take a 100-pound haul bag, go down to your local REI, MEC, what's it over in the UK or over in Ireland, your outdoor store.
Yep.
Grab a 70-liter haul bag, fill it full of sandbags, and drop it into your confined space, or hang it on fall protection off of your tower jib or crane or mast or whatever you want, and tell your rescue standby team to go get it.
Yeah.
And if they come back, if they get it, boom, no problem. If they can't because of competence issues, that's one thing. If they show back up to you and start asking for more money, that's another thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think industry out there that hires private rescue providers don't have that knowledge. They didn't show up ready to do the job. If they're saying, oh, wow, I need a flux capacitor now, that's going to be $100,000. I'm just going to add that to my bill. I mean, it's reasonable to say, hey, your space is full of ethyl methyl death and I'm going to ruin some kit to do this. Do you mind? Sure, it's on scene, understandable. But to say, hey, I need to go and buy a flux capacitor to do this, they either didn't pre-plan this correctly or they're trying to take you for a ride to buy something they don't necessarily need.
Yeah, gotcha. And so of everyone I know involved in rescue, you're fairly well traveled, whether it's right across North America, but I've seen you over in Europe a number of times for Grimpday. Could you tell everyone a little bit about what that competition is and why it's special?
So Grimpdays, Chow in Taiwan, there's Grimpday Asia, Grimpday Namur is the original, there's Grimp North America, they're looking at Peru one now coming up. Yeah, I think I've either competed, been staff, or controlled 13 different Grimpdays now, and I love them. Rescue, whether it's public or private, is a fairly low frequency, high risk event. To coin a term that everybody that's gone through the fire service will have seen that video. Gordon, I can't remember his last name, but yeah, it's a low frequency, high risk event. What Grimpday does is it is a usually 2 to 3 day competition where you're running anywhere from 4 to 6 rescue events a day, live patient, full on events. I mean, you're talking events where it's like, 2 ropes hanging off a 70-meter bridge. Ascend the ropes, get you and your entire team and the patient to the top. There's confined space. Grimp North America, we gave teams 19 minutes to complete it. There was teams, I think 4 teams didn't complete it in the 19 minutes. One of the industrial teams, not really a surprise considering their background, did the best.
Yeah.
And the other teams are right around the 90-minute, like 85, 89 minutes. So what it does is it tests teams, and they're 5-person teams, a team leader, and then a crew of 4 to real world standards. And what I love about Grimpday is, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent. The technology in rope rescue has evolved tenfold. In 90, when I got in the Army, you'd rappel out of helicopters with a oval steel locking carabiner and 2 things, a hawser laid rope, and out you go. Well, you have a good time. I joined the fire service. We were on rescue 8s and munters. We all learn now that munters won't even hold a 2-person load, but hey, it was the early 90s, whatever, right? So then we went to, rescue 8s and 540s, and then brake racks and 540s, and then IDs, and then radium release hitches. And then all of a sudden it just spiked. We hit MPDs and maestros and clutches and IDs and Siriuses. Yeah. And, it's just like sky's the limit at this point. And I think a lot of teams get confused. I think they keep bringing in stuff, and it's like, we didn't even learn how to finish the training on the last device we had. And all of a sudden there's a new flux capacitor on the market I need to buy. And what Grimp does is it busts it back down to the basics. And it busts it down to the basics because generally most Grimps, you have somewhere between 6 to 15 minutes to access the patient. And you have between 60 to 90 minutes to finish the scenario. And you're talking at times like highline scenarios. Run a highline scenario in 60 minutes. All of a sudden, all the stuff that's whiz-bang technology that, looked good in a catalog may not look so good anymore. It starts to, you busting it back down to basics. Simple, fast, clean rigging, quick patient access. I'm preaching to the choir for people that are probably listening to this, because that's what this is about, is saving patients. It's getting there safely quickly and getting the
Mhm.
patient out to further medical care.
Uh,
There was a
on the day, what happens is there's a number of challenges set up and the teams rotate around the
yeah, so
challenges and have to solve them.
yeah, so we'll go with Grimp Namor. It was the original. It's kind of the gold standard to be held to. To the folks that hold it, if they're listening to this, they're in Europe. All kudos to you. You guys do an outstanding job. It's been pushed back a little bit right now. They won't be releasing any information until the 20th because of obviously this worldwide pandemic we all seem to
Mhm.
find ourselves in. But yeah, so you show up on day one, and basically it's like a bloodletting. Every team does a scenario to see whether or not your team is actually competent to carry on to day 2 and 3. And I mean, there was one year, I think they rescued 5 teams out of the day one scenario. So you got
Okay.
35 teams, you're down to like 30, 31 right away because 4 or 5 teams couldn't even finish, the test to see if you're good enough to go to the next days.
Okay.
And then the next 2 days, Grimp Namur is 5 scenarios a day. And the thing I really like about Namur is it's the first place I saw it being from North America. I'm used to a very regimented system. They don't really care if you want to take a half an hour for lunch or whether you want to drive down the street and go to the pub. Course closes at 7 o'clock. Get your 5 scenarios done, understanding that there's going to be queues at certain scenarios, and there may be time to get there. You might have to hike a couple kilometers to get to a scenario. You may have to get your team into a car and drive to a
Mhm.
scenario. Um, so, but yeah, they're very laissez-faire. If you want to take an hour for lunch and a couple coffee breaks, you may not make all 5 scenarios in a day. And year one that we were there, the first year we competed was 2013. We finished our first scenario with typical North American fire service, high fives all around. Let's debrief this. Let's chat it down. Let's sit down, have some water. 30 minutes later, we get up. There's teams that have finished 3 events by this point. We're looking at our watch going, it's 10:15. We have another 4 scenarios to run. We got to be off course by 6. All of a sudden, that urgency picks up. So, with all of that, that's why I like Grimpday. It imposes both internal and external stresses on you. You have peers watching you compete.
Mhm.
It's about as real as it gets live patient. I mean, besides hurting the patient, it's about as real as it gets besides doing it for real.
Do you see big differences in the how teams approach it, whether they're different industry backgrounds, as in if they're military versus firefighter background versus mountain rescue, and then how does that change by continent? I mean, you must see differences in European rescue styles versus North American.
It's a great question. When we showed up the first year, we were the only team with MPDs.
Okay.
We were also using Hall prussics because that's how we were taught. We were tightening high lines, the old W method for people out there that are familiar with it. And so while people are taking photos of the MPDs, they're looking at us, asking us kind of if we're dumb about doing the other stuff, right? And we're like, Second year, London Fire Brigade shows up with MPDs. We've thrown the prussics away. We're going back to mechanical rope grabs. We're not pulling things. And during the course of that year, we did some testing to figure it out. We talked to some smart people over here. And by the third year, a lot more teams are using MPDs. No one's using prussic, right? And so you evolve with the event,
Mm-hmm.
and you evolve to a point. And I would suggest that 90, maybe 80 to 90% of the teams are running the same, if not similar gear. You want to see what the best gear in the world is right now? Go to a Grimpday,
I'm
because a lot
sure.
of these people are sponsored. A lot of them have money to buy stuff, and what they're picking up is right now what is primo on the market.
Yeah.
And it works because if everybody's using the exact same control descent device or the exact same pulley, it says
Mm-hmm.
something, doesn't it? But where it starts to split out, that last 15%, let's call it, I say 5% is team technique
Yeah.
because there is some technique differences. And 10%, and maybe more, I mean, it might be 80% and 5 and 15%. That last 10, 15% is leadership.
Mm-hmm.
The teams, and this is where, when you talk about police, military, fire teams,
Yeah.
this is where you start to see your differences because Axel Mance, he's come in third for 4 years and he's changed his team almost entirely. That's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
That's training and leadership.
Yeah.
And I mean, kudos to him. The military, it's you talk, and we've picked up stuff from the Belgian military, how they break down their team. They run a team lead, and then they have their binomes, teams of two riggers, two rescuers. They have a team lead on each one. And it's that leadership component. It's how they structure their team. It's how they run their team. It's how they communicate within that team that makes the difference between first and 22nd. Because, like I said, the equipment, 80% of the equipment's the same. 5% technique difference and like 15 to 20%, leadership. And you look at leaders like Truls from Oslo Fire, Xavier from Namur. And I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but those are ones that jump to my mind. Some of the teams that have won it over the years, KRTs, the Berlins, you watch their team leaders and they're phenomenal. They really are phenomenal. And we've seen it with our own team. We've seen the team rankings change based on the dynamics of the team and the team leader.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'd love to get to that one day. It sounds like, even just watching, it sounds like great spectator sport of to watch and see how everyone approaches the challenges. I love a good
to cut in on that. The best thing about Grimpday is the last night. The team that comes in 34th gets the same amount of cheers as the team that comes in first. It's that atmosphere. And yes, it's a competition. There's a lot of type A personalities out there. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of words on the course. Words are said. But at the end, it's there for people to meet people, look at new techniques and equipment, learn and share. And that's the big part of it.
I love watching clever challenges being put together to people that are, you have to really think about the solution and watch a team go at them. To wrap this up, I'd love to talk about the future of rescue. So, we can see all sorts of technologies coming in from left and right, of whether they're drones or ROVs or all these automated things. Is there anything else simpler to this, that other than maybe incidents not happening, but what's going to change the industry dramatically? I mean, what's going to kill your job if you don't change? What's changing? What are the trends? Where is it leading in the world? What does this look like in 50 years' time?
It's a good question. I think users at places like Grimpday and, heavy use users, talk like the FDNY, they're pushing manufacturers to build better widgets. I think the standards organizations are going to have to tweak and respond quicker. Places like NFPA and Quarters Institute, EN standards, they may have to change the revision cycles in order to meet the equipment that's coming on the market so that it can be usable. And I'll get to the 50 years in a sec. Lighter, faster. The next 10 years, I think that's where it's going to be. The stronger materials that are being released. We have G-rated 11 mil ropes now, 8 mil ropes, 5 mil cordage, can't really call them ropes of that size, that are 22 kilonewtons strength, 5,000 pounds for the American viewer. These devices, or these cords and ropes, are going to end up needing devices that work well and slip with those. And what that'll do is it'll take your 11-person team and knock it to a 5-person team at like a Grimpday that's, kind of the standard now, and move it lower, where you have devices doing multiple things to remove people from that. And that's where you bring up, when you talk about ROVs and drones and whatnot, we talk to clients about rigging. We talk, when would you use a tripod reeve? Well, you'd use a tripod reeve in a confined space if there's ethyl methyl death coming out of the space, so you don't have to expose too many people to ethyl methyl death. And that's a big thing, is trying to keep those people safe. So anytime someone goes into harm's way to do a rescue, there is that potential. So the less people that are there, the less potential. And so that's where you talk about lighter equipment, more versatile equipment that does more stuff to lower your team size. To push it forward 50 years, you think, are there going to be automated firefighters and rope rescuers going out there and doing this? I don't think the technology exists. I think they're going to look at it from the other side, where they go, how do we mitigate the rescue from occurring? Not how do we mitigate the number of rescuers or mitigate
Yeah.
the rescuer going in. And I mean, there's been great advancements in things like AI, and we got automated cars and things like this, but Tesla cars still crash. And the problem with it is you can only screw up a rescue once.
Hmm.
You still need that live person to make that decision. And sometimes the decisions are based on morals. Sometimes the decisions are based on logic. Sometimes the decisions aren't based on common sense.
Yeah.
And that's where I think AI will have a problem. I could spock out any rescue. Oh, the chances of Billy being alive in there under 3 minutes are now at 15.2%. The chances of these people dying on the way in are 17.8%. Billy dies. And that's so easy to do. That's a math equation. But Billy has a family. Billy's, alive right now. We swore an oath to try to help him, so there's these other factors that come into play that, once that math equation changes percentage, Billy's still a viable rescue. And that's where I think AI and, automation will have a problem. And even if you have, you've got Bomb Squad coming on next week. Obviously, they've got the remote devices. They send them out there in case things go boom. They blow up a device and not a human.
Mm.
They're making good advancements in that. And I could see robotics coming into rescue. But you look at something like a confined space in a ship. Hey, we're going to go down a ladder. And then the next one has no ladder. We've got a 10-foot hole. We move over 20 feet. Now we got just a 40-foot run. Then you get to the bottom of that. And then you got portholes. It's tough to find a robotic that can climb a ladder and then somehow hover or rappel down 40 feet and then get over 3-foot portholes, even just to give you SA on what's going on. I mean, maybe putting a drone down there, but now you've got RF and Bluetooth issues that haven't been solved because of the nature of the confined spaces, concrete, steel.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see it move that way. There's certainly advancements that can help me do my job. Right now, I just don't think the industry's there. And hopefully in 20 years, they've solved some of those connectivity issues, some of those mobility issues. The decision making, I think, in things like rescue will always come down to a human, because I don't think there's an algorithm that you can make. Like where,
Can't
like I
teach
said,
them
where,
ethics.
yeah, where do you make that metric line? Where is Billy so unviable and the rescue so potentially dangerous that the metrics at such a discrepancy that you decide that that's where you're going to program that computer?
Well, it comes back like your example with the Tesla is the famous sort of issue of, do you program in to do age detection of, you can hit the old lady or the young child? You've got to hit one of them because both are taking up a lane in front of you. Should the car decide to hit one or the other based on an ethical decision, if it has to hit one? It's all of these pieces, right? So it sounds to me like you're predicting having more intel, having more assisting tools to assist you, but humans doing the rescue.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly think there's a place for advancements in technologies to go in. I mean, right now in large confined space rescues, you put a human or two usually with a rig pack and a med pack on air with monitors, and they're human guinea pigs in reality. They're the canary in the mine.
Yeah.
If the monitor starts to go off, they take a look, they're on air. And if it says LEL problem, they start running, because that's the one thing that we have a very difficult time controlling. I mean, the supplied air respirator, the SCBAs, they'll
Just
protect you
give the
from a lot of things.
LEL acronym level.
Oh, sorry, lower explosive limit. That's one of those ones where if you clip the carabiner off the side of something metal and make the spark, the boom, right? SCBA doesn't work so well in that environment. And that's
Wrapped in a
what I
plastic
think
suit.
yeah, the technology advances. If I can send something into that hole that will tell me the atmosphere. Now we're talking, I mean, what are we going to do? Send a mass spectrometer in there? But, even a drone with a 4-gas. Do I have LEL issues? What are my gas issues, my atmospheric issues in there? Because if I can send them in, bare ass as opposed to covered in protective equipment, they're faster. If they're faster, it's better for the patient. So it's being able to deploy that technology in front of the team as the team's getting ready, timely enough to give me essay that I can make decisions, situational awareness, sorry, that I can make decisions on
Yeah.
in real time so that I can now either slow down or speed up that rescue.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's fascinating. Really enjoyed that chat, Mark. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been great. I really appreciate being the first person on here, and I took up, I think, like 43 minutes of your time. Sorry about that.
No, delighted. It's been really good and really interesting. There's lots of people saying hello on YouTube in the comments and watching from all over the world. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you again to Mark, and we'll be back in about 2 weeks' time.
All right. Thank you very much, Robin. I appreciate it.
Thanks again.